Hey there, Quilt Maven Dave here, and I'm going to show you how I cut fabric. It is quick, it is accurate, and it saves a lot of time compared to the traditional way that most of us were taught how to cut fabric. This is not my own method. I've been cutting my fabric like this for years. I just don't remember where I saw it or who told it to me, but I know there's a couple of YouTube videos out there. And for those of you taking the Storm at Sea class, I can't tell you how much quicker it is. It takes me about 20 minutes to half an hour to cut the fabric completely for Storm at Sea. But for today's purposes, we're going to look at the directions for cutting baggie number 1, which is the large center square, and it starts with the dark fabric. So the first thing I do, and the rulers I use are 15-inch square and 6 by 10, 12, 6 by 12, 6 by 12. That's correct. And the first thing I do is I never cut the full length of the fabric from selvage to the fold. I always do a second fold. And some people are a little nervous about that because they don't want V's in their strips. So I'm going to show you how to avoid that. First thing, ignore the selvage completely. You have no idea if the selvage is straight. So I never, ever, ever use the selvage. And what I do is I fold it in half, and it's the only time I use the lines on my cutting mat, but I fold it in half, and then I look down here to see if I'm even close to parallel. And what I do is I make sure that it ends up parallel. What I do is I take my 15-inch ruler, I put the 1-inch line on the top fold, and I look at the bottom, and it looks like I did a good job on this one. It looks even. So if these two lines are parallel, then this has to be a straight line. And all I need to do is cut off the end because it's a little ragged. And sometimes, one layer sticks out a little farther than the other. And I have learned how to make one cut with my left hand. Wish me luck. And the ruler just moved. Of course, because I don't have those things on it. Nice sharp blade, and there. So this is now good to go. And every strip I cut will be straight with no zigzags in it. The directions say for the dark fabric to cut one 4-inch strip and two 4.5-inch strips. And if you add 4 and 4.5 and 4.5, you get 13 inches. Okay. Now, traditionally, what we would do is we would cut a 4-inch strip and then remove the fabric and move over and cut a 4.5-inch strip and then move the fabric. But every time you do that, you have no idea if your ruler has shifted a little bit, and if the next edge that you're lining your ruler to on this side is going to be straight. So I never touch this cut because I know it's straight. And what I do is I make sure that I have the top edge, the bottom edge, and the side are all straight. And now I know that when I cut, this cut is going to be as straight as this cut. And if you added all those numbers together, you get 13. 4, 4.5, and 4.5 is 13. So I set up my ruler and I put my 13-inch line on the edge of the fabric. And I just cut off 13 inches because that's what I need. Ta-da. Whoops. No ta-da. Ta-da. All right. So I need a 4-inch strip. So I count 1, 2, 3, 4 is 9 inches. And so all I do is move this down to 9 inches. Now this line, this cut has not been touched. So that's the registration of the next cut. As long as you don't mess with this end, you'll always get a straight cut over here. So here's my 4 inches. And then I need 2 4.5 inches. So I go to 4.5 because I need 2 4.5 inch cuts. So I move it down from 9 to 4.5 and I cut. And now you can see I have 2 4.5 inch strips and one stuck together 4-inch strip. Not even close. But that's all right because it's near the selvage. So we'll just do that. Okay. So I'm going to put the 2 4.5 inch strips aside because we're going to cut 9 4-inch squares out of this piece of fabric. So what I do is I open it up. You can see it's nice and straight. Nice and straight. And 4, I have a 15-inch ruler. 4 times 4 is 16, so I can't use 16, so I use 12. And what I do is I cut off the selvages first. My dog is pawing at me as I'm trying to do this. Later. We'll do this later. Okay? So I can get 3 squares out of this because I move it to 12 inches. This line is straight. This line is straight. This line is straight. I cut off 12. And then I move it 4 inches, which is 8. Making sure that I'm looking at the top line, the bottom line, and the side line, or that line. And I cut another 4-inch, and then I bring it down to 4 inches. And I cut that. Notice, I haven't moved anything. So I have 2, 4, and 6 4-inch squares, but we need 9. So I measure this, and I have 8 inches, which is divisible by 4. I line everything up. This is why I work towards the fold. Cut that, move it to 4 inches, and cut that. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So now I have an extra square. Now the directions say to cut 2 4.5 inch strips, which I've done, and cut 18 4.5 inch squares. So I take the 2 pieces, the 2 strips that I just cut, and I lay them out, one on top of the other. Make sure the folds line up, make sure the top edges line up, the bottom edges line up. Everything looks beautiful. Okay, so what's the first thing I do? I cut off my selvage because we don't want selvage, right? Right. Now I want 4.5 inch squares. So 4.5 and 4.5 is 9, and 4.5 is 13.5. So I move my ruler down to 13.5, and I make a cut. And then I move it down to 9. And I make a cut. And then I move it down to 4.5. You seeing how this works yet? Okay, so I have one stuck together, two stuck together. All right, so I have three 4.5 inch squares. Now, before I do anything else, since I know that they have to be cut into half square triangles, I just take a shorter ruler, corner to corner, and I cut. So there's one. This one does have a grippy thing on it, and so sometimes it doesn't move so easily. Two. And three. Now don't forget I have 4 layers of fabric here. So 3 times 4 is 12, and when you cut that in half, I now have 24 half square triangles right there. And I need 36 altogether. Now, 4.5 and 4.5 is 9. Do I have 9 inches there? No. So I'm going to go to 4.5 and I'm going to cut it. And now you'll see why I always work toward, and as long as I'm here, I may as well just cut it in half. And now what I do is open up the fold. And I can get 2 more 4.5 inch squares. Right? Right. So 4.5. And then I just cut those in half on the diagonal. I don't even worry about the fold because the ruler presses everything nice and flat. Okay. So there you have it. Those are done. That's the dark fabric for the Storm at Sea, the large center square. And that's the way you would keep going. You just measure on the next one, for instance, or let's talk about the light fabric that you need to do also. From the light fabric, it says cut 2 3.5 inch strips. So I'm going to cut a 7-inch strip, and then I'm going to move the ruler over, and I'm going to cut my 3.5, and then open them up one on top of the other, cut them, and without moving them, slice them in half diagonally. And that's as simple as it can be. It takes a little getting used to. It feels a little odd. But trust me, these are accurate. It's the correct number. And you're ready to move on. Without explaining it and showing everything, it takes about, I don't know, 3-5 minutes to do that. Anyway, that's how I cut fabric. And I will be posting other tips and tricks that I use. But for now, I will say thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Quilt Maven Dave here.